Adam Gold Show on this Friday. Paul Ihander in for Adam today. Appreciate him letting sit in for me. Graham Hill as well here producing the show. And joining us this morning, it's been an interesting offseason for the NHL certainly, and for this man as well, as he's seen some faces arrive on his roster for the upcoming 2025-2026 campaign. Head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, Rod Brind'Amour, joins us. Thanks for hanging out with us, Coach.
All right, no problem. Glad to be on.
And Coach, so on Thursday night, you were probably finishing off your last few Timbits, just thinking to yourself, maybe we'll get some work done tonight, get ready for a long weekend, and then all of a sudden we get an 8-year contract extension for Jackson Blake. Just your initial thoughts about making sure that he's part of the core of this team for the upcoming future.
Well, I think that you just said it. I mean, it's, you identify players that, number one, are talented and good hockey players, but then we want guys that, I say do it right, have just a great character and hardworking kids. And when you find them, you want to keep them as long as you can. And I think that's kind of what we've done here. And I think we all agree, there's a lot of talent there. I know he's only played a year, but I think it's pretty evident that it's going to be a good bet for both sides, and going to be happy to have him around for a long time.
Rod Brind'Amour, Carolina Hurricanes head coach, joined us this morning on the Adam Gold Show. Paul Ihander and Graham Hill filling in for Adam. And Coach Brind'Amour, I'm starting to notice a trend during your tenure as the head coach. And again, this is all a part of the front office, but after certain players, young players, have these breakout seasons like an Andrei Svechnikov, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Seth Jarvis, now Jackson Blake, you guys like to go ahead and lock them up long term. What is it about recognizing talent right away and realizing that you want these guys to stick around on your team?
Yeah, I think it's most of those guys you mentioned is pretty obvious to see, but I think it's the other part. I think it's when you invest in those kind of players, you're investing in people, and whether they ever actually reach that full potential, whether or not, you're still okay with them because you know what they bring in the room and what kind of people they are and the work ethic and all that stuff. So I think we've done a real good job identifying that. And like I said, when you like somebody and know it's a great fit, you want to make sure you can try to keep them around as long as possible.
Sports radio is all about speculation, Coach, and so you signed Jackson Blake to the long-term deal. In the offseason, you locked down Logan Stankoven as well. Is there an imaginary world, or is there a multiverse world where you have both those guys on a line with that speedy center, and this is like your dream line?
Well, I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. That'd be great. I think it's still... It's more about just keep getting good young talent and great people, like I mentioned, and then trying to figure out how it all blends together. And we know in hockey, there's the lines change quite a bit, and you're always shuffling things around. But we love the talent that both those players possess, and the potential for them to keep getting better and better is certainly real.
Staying on Logan Stankoven for just a second, his extension as well, Coach. Obviously comes into the organization during a murky time. I'll just leave it at that. But what impressed you the most about his development last season that gave you the stamp of approval that this is another guy that we want to keep around here?
Well, I think it's what I've talked about already. He came in. I didn't have nobody did really. He hadn't played a ton of games, but I think there was a lot of potential there. And then once you get a kid around, or anybody around this group, and you kind of get to know them a little bit, you see what kind of person they are, and he was a great fit. And I think his willingness to kind of do whatever the team asks and willingness to get better, I think that to me is the key. Everybody can say the right things, but you gotta do it. And this guy is one of those guys that we know. Constantly working on his game and trying to do whatever he can to make the team better, and that's somebody we definitely want around.
Having a good conversation here with Carolina Hurricanes head coach Rod Brind'Amour here on the Adam Gold Show. And, Coach, the new CBA's been done. You get 2 more regular season games starting the following season, 2 fewer preseason games. I know you're not a big all-star game guy, but when it comes to extending the season and reducing the preseason, how does that affect you?
Well, it doesn't really affect me. It's good. I'm not a big fan of preseason hockey games. They're just, I think the guys nowadays, they come into camp in great shape. And, literally could start as soon as they show up and start playing games. And so those preseason games are you're just trying to get through them without getting dinged up and whatever. So I'd rather just, gas the whole preseason, to be honest. And if they have to add a few games to make up for it, that's fine. I'd rather play games for real than the day where guys came to camp and you who's going to make the team, like those days are pretty much done. You kind of almost, everybody knows who's on the team. It's, it's where you fit is really what happens now. It's just based on how the contracts are laid out. So it's a little different than it was in previous years, in the past. And so shortening the preseason is I think, a good move.
Obviously, Coach, you've gotten used to it during your time living both in Raleigh, but also coaching the Hurricanes organization. And it's the North Carolina State Fair road trip, as we like to call it, 2 weeks into the season, a gauntlet of early part of the schedule. Is there anything that you're trying to figure out about your team when you're playing that much away from home and you kind of start to see if the guys really start to bond with one another and build that cohesive unit?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, it maybe is probably too much blowing up about that kind of stuff. It's like, everybody has these long road trips and, the guys are together a lot more, obviously, when you're on the road. But, I don't know how much that helps or doesn't help. I think it's good to, when you're fresh, meaning we're not, with all the travel that goes on in the air, we're not kind of bogged down right away. So everyone's a little more enthusiastic about being on the road. I enjoy that, getting it out of the way, those road games early, especially generally we go out west somewhere. And so that's a long trip. So if you can kind of knock it out when everyone's still pretty excited about, playing, I think as the season drags on, those trips become a little tougher.
Hey, Coach Rod Brind'Amour joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Coach, I want to talk about your offseason a little bit. Is there some big group chat of you coaches in the offseason going, oh, sweet, what a great move, glad you got that guy, or that guy's a good dude, or you're thinking to yourself, man, should we just get together and play some golf in Whistler next summer?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You're onto something there. I think. No, we don't have a big group chat. I certainly have, just like anyone would. Certain coaches you're a little more connected with.
Sure.
And if I end up getting one of their players or whatever, you'll get a text or whatever or some sort of communication. But we're pretty competitive. For the most part, we respect each other, but everybody knows everybody wants to, beat each other up when it really comes down to it. So, there isn't really one of those things going around, but you do definitely get comments from guys that when you pick up players or when you re-sign guys, that's for sure.
So when the Hurricanes were involved very much so on July 1st and the days following, who blew up your phone the most about the guys that you were pulling in?
Well, actually, the most comes from our own players a lot of times. Like, okay. I'll get texts from guys like, hey, good move. Like, you're getting, whatever. I think they appreciate the organization trying to get better, right? Like, they all have the same goal. So we want to win the whole thing. We need to keep trying to get better. And I think they appreciate the moves where, they see we're attempting to, get better. And that's the goal.
Final question for Carolina Hurricanes head coach Rod Brind'Amour joining us on the Adam Gold Show. When you think about the team identity going into this upcoming year, does this current roster reflect the kind of team that you want to coach, fast, aggressive, and defensively sound?
Well, I think if that's what it becomes, then yes. I think you just said it. That's any coach would love to have that. It's end of the day, I think, we've definitely built something here. And that identity can't waver. We're going to adapt and we're going to, make your adjustments. But what's made this team successful we can't deviate from that. And that's kind of what you just mentioned. It's also being ultra competitive, and that's, I think, kind of been a trademark of our group, and I know that's something we're not going to waver from.
Always great to talk NHL shop in the offseason and in-season with Carolina Hurricanes head coach Rod Brind'Amour. And, Coach, I'm not trying to get your approval or anything, but did you enjoy the fact that I dropped a Tim Hortons reference, and maybe I should talk more about all-dressed chips and things like that when we talk?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're kind of barking up a tree that I'm not really all that familiar with, but I do know what you're referring to. So, I don't know. Listen, it's your show. You do it how you want.
Okay, well, listen, then I appreciate that, Coach. Rod, thanks for hanging out with us today. Always great to catch up.
Okay, take care, guys.